Hey, good morning. Gordon.
I think we have a couple of people still trying to connect. We can give a few more minutes. Okay, good morning, everyone. Just a quick update. We have some technical difficulties. We don't have Facebook Live up at the moment, but we're going to work on it. And if we continue to have a problem, we'll just upload it immediately after the meeting. But it is 10:01, so Matt,
Let's do it.
You're ready. All right.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Johns. I'm the Rapides Parish representative on the Louisiana Watershed Initiative Region 5 Governance and Long-Term Sustainability Subcommittee, which we will call to order today, September 16th at 10:01 a.m. So that our records will reflect your attendance, please type your name and affiliation in the chat box when you're able to. The agendas were sent out earlier, but they're also available online at planacadiana.org. And also, the purpose of this public meeting is to consider items established by the agenda. Public input is welcome on these items. However, to ensure an orderly meeting, members of the public shall speak at the time designated. Please submit your comments and questions in the chat box, and comments and questions will be addressed during the public comment period, usually at the end of the meeting. At this time, we'll take roll call and go through any introductions if needed. Again, please don't forget to add your name and affiliation in the chat box. I see some of you doing it now. Thanks. All right. Roll call, please.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Appreciate the reminder to for everyone to leave your name in the chat box. All right, I will call roll at this time. Please answer if you're present. Mr. Donald Bajeron. It's online. Larry Richard or Ben Longlinay. Matt Johns.
Here.
Casey Corville.
Casey's here.
Hey, Casey, good morning.
Morning.
Okay. Miss Donald Segura.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Iman Habib, Dr. Habib.
Here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, roll call complete.
All right, we've got enough to conduct business. Thank you, guys. Next thing on the agenda is approving the action summary from the last meetings. If you guys have had a moment, we'll entertain a motion to recommend approval.
Yeah, I'll pull up the minutes. And if anyone has any questions or would like to make a motion.
This is Casey. I'll make a motion.
Okay,
You got a motion to approve? You get a second?
I do. Donald does.
Perfect. Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on the action summary? All right, all those in favor, or actually we'll do it this way. Is there any opposition to approving the minutes or the meeting summary? Hearing none, those are approved. Thank you, guys. Next item on the agenda is watershed updates, and we get to turn it over to the state. Is Brad online?
I don't know if I saw Brad. Let's see. Brad Spiegel, are you available? Might not be on yet.
Or anyone from OCD? All right, we can come back to it. We'll move to the next agenda item, which is the final governance recommendation. And Keela, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So just kind of wanted to go over status update. So our final governance recommendation was adopted by the Regional Steering Committee on July 15th. and submitted to LWI. On August 5th, a final governor's recommendation slide, which you see here on screen, the highlights was presented to the Council on Watershed Management at the meeting. This is included in your agenda packet. It's a good outreach tool that can be used to communicate to your legislature, which we will discuss on the next agenda item. Does anyone have any questions regarding the final governance recommendation? You can always add them in the chat box as well. Okay. If not, we can move on to the next agenda item. We have this initial discussion for our legislative outreach strategies. Again, in your packet, we have the governance highlight slide. We have, after that, we have a governance one-pager. And we also have the updated Region 5 action plan. This was updated recently to show our progress. This will also be available online. The one pager too is a very good outreach tool, again, as we're moving towards the legislative session for supporters or watershed champions or your legislatures. The regional capacity, speaking of the action plan, the regional capacity building grant has been extended for additional 4 years until July 2025. So I want to pose a question to you today. You don't have to answer it, but we can kind of have these thoughts in the back of your head. What would you like to see happen regarding the next round of capacity building funding? And those ideas will be welcome, and we can discuss this at the next meeting. But we did have, again, good news that the regional capacity building grant was extended for another 4 years. And if anyone has any thoughts or questions about that at the moment, you can definitely voice that now.
And you're asking specific to the regional capacity building grant?
Yes, if there's thoughts or ideas how we move forward for the next 4 years.
Okay.
Oh,
you want to just give a high-level overview of what we have accomplished and are focused on this past round of funding?
Sure. So we had obviously a round one program, round one funding. It's our state projects and programs that were funded. And then we had round one for our regional funds, which we have 3 projects that's been approved. And again, Brad Spiegel at LWI OCD can update on this, but those regional round one projects that were approved with this funding, those award letters should be going out this month. Also, we had project criteria for those regional round one fund that we didn't really have to use for round one, but they can be used perhaps in round 3 as we continue. The round 2 funding will be for technical assistance for projects that were viable in round 1, but not selected. And again, hopefully maybe Brad Spiegel can give us some more details when he joins us. For the governance, we adopted our final governance recommendation. We're going to be looking towards, I guess, the next round of funding, looking at our coalition once we're enabled in the structure of the coalition. Like we have progress in terms of for floodplain management. We had that floodplain management subcommittee that was dissolved and evolved to a CRS user group, which we were trying to have a meeting before the end of this year. And then we have talks, this is later in the agenda item as well, about our flood coordination plan update for the region.
So,
Go ahead.
Sorry. So
Okay.
initially our regional capacity building grant program, can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Was really seed money to basically start up these coalitions and to really initiate a lot of the conversations that we're having today. But now that we're entering into like the next round of funding, it's not only to administer, I guess, the programs that are being implemented from a state perspective, but what other additional initiatives should we take on, should we consider as a region? I think as the science becomes more concrete, that with the modeling effort and also with the support of the gauges, there's going to be a lot more opportunity and a lot more, maybe a role that we could fill. So as we work through the action plan, maybe at later meetings, just be thinking about what other gaps maybe exist in terms of services that are not being provided in terms of flood coordination, drainage coordination, and even floodplain management coordination. Consider what are those initiatives that we need to embed into this action plan, so we have a guiding document to basically move our efforts forward. So we will facilitate more conversations around this, but I do want to just stop and take a moment and thank everybody for their continued participation, because I think over the last couple of years, we've accomplished a lot. And it's somewhat captured in this document, but even the numerous outreach meetings, just the standing up of the steering committees in general that happened across the state, I think this was a huge effort. So we will, as Killian mentioned, we will be updating this in upcoming meetings, but be thinking about what else needs to be included in our initiatives.
I do have a couple comments there. I'll see if somebody pop up in the chat. Okay, before I jump into that, we do have some phone numbers that are on a call. If we could take just a second to get some, if you would, if you're on the phone, you can unmute for just a second to let us know who you are. We'd appreciate it. You can state your phone number and your name and affiliation. Got a 225-931 number.
Daniel Hill with the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries.
Great, thank you, Daniel.
So much. And we've also got a 318-305 number. And if I remember correctly, I think it's *6 to unmute yourself on the phone.
That might be, it might be Lance, because I think he logs on the computer and maybe on the phone as well.
The audio. Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
All right, we'll move on.
Thank you, Rachel.
You mentioned some just ideas about what happens next. Obviously, the first part of this thing was standing the thing up, doing some coordination, getting to the point that we're at now. We're kind of handing off a lot of the legislative work, from our committees and our staff and our board to the state, and OCD to kind of run this through the legislative process and over the next year. I think one of the things that we definitely need to be considering is trying to show some value to the potential member communities, so that whether it's a tax or fees or whatever are being talked about, that the initial thought is not just throw up in your mouth, because I don't want to talk about having to spend more money on government. If we're showing up at their meetings, providing some assistance in grant development for, dealing with some hazard mitigation activities, if we're coordinating, especially with your smaller entities that maybe aren't doing as much floodplain management, to go show them, here are all the federal rules that are actually now local rules. These are the things you're supposed to be doing. We can help you with that. Just basically show some value. It's going to be a lot of getting your faces in front of them and showing that we have something to offer, so that whenever the ask comes later, whether it's the legislative or the financing, that we're in a good position to just not have people immediately turn it off.
Yeah, agreed, Matt. And I think maybe in a few minutes, or maybe next agenda item out, I'd like to have a healthy discussion on what the legislative outreach should be, or what it should look like. And maybe just get some input from you all based on your experiences that you have had about how we proceed forward.
Gotcha. Are there any other comments from the members?
Yeah, I see Earl Garber has his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Earl.
Good morning, Earl.
Can y'all hear me, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wonder why the camera's not coming on.
That's okay.
Well,
We can
it
hear
doesn't
you.
matter. As long as you can hear me. I guess, Matt, you made the comment we were handing it off to the state. I guess that was where my question stood. In other words, I would hope as a local representative, we're going to play a big part in bringing that forward through the state activity, and that we're not just handing it off. So I would hope that we're going to take a close look at how we can play a part. I was kind of hoping that Brad Spiegel would give us an update and kind of begin to give us a vision of where we're going to go to build to get this accomplished in the legislature. So that's all I wanted to say. Hopefully we're not just handing it off, that we'll be a big part of accomplishing it.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Earl. I think we do need to, steering committee members and folks in the field that have a vested interest, we do need to carry it forward in whatever capacity we can. So I do agree with you.
Yeah, I maybe
Thank
missed
you, Earl.
the states.
Oh.
Oh, here we go. Go ahead, bud.
I see you got your video to work. Congratulations.
Yeah, I finally came alive.
So we're in kind of that review and kind of waiting process right now of just waiting for everyone that needs to review the regional recommendations that were submitted at the August council meeting, to have their time to review those and to see how it fits into the larger statewide framework. We're kind of anticipating to have some feedback from the agency heads in the fall. So this, hopefully soon, in the next couple of months, we'd like to have some answers as to how we're going to progress. So I know that's not the biggest update that you want to hear, but there has been a delay, obviously, because of the hurricane. So we would hope that by your next subcommittee meeting, that we should have more of an update about that.
Brad, I may have a couple of questions for you, just so that there's, I guess, a broader understanding among the committee members. Yes. So we all of the steering committee submitted our governance recommendation to the state. So can you elaborate a little bit more on who's doing the reviewing and what the process is to maybe consolidate those recommendations? And is there a consolidation process that has to happen? Is it one legislative package enabling all of the coalitions, or can you talk a little bit about that in general?
Sorry, I was fixing my video. So as far as I'm concerned, so the council, the easiest answer is that the council heads and the departments are kind of reviewing. There was a white paper that was completed about different potential legislative pathways for the state, and regarding higher standards, and regarding a statewide watershed management framework, and with the regional, standing up regional coalitions within that statewide framework. And so they're all reviewing those right now. I know also the Governor's Office of Coastal Affairs, GOCA, is also, and Lindsay's on this call if she wants to provide any update too. They're involved kind of reviewing, the best strategy for the governor. So that's kind of the best. That's really as much as I know, as much as we know right now, is that everyone's just still deliberating of what is the best path forward. And what they're deliberating on is, what does the legislative package look like, and obviously the region, they want there to be collaboration with the regions and all the watershed coordinators, but they're just deciding on what is the best approach, and they're delayed in these discussions because of the hurricanes. So
okay. Is there going to be opportunity for the regions maybe to have some input in or feedback in that decision-making process?
I would hope so. I don't see, it's really kind of beyond me at this point. And so I don't want to say yes or no. It kind of has to, we're waiting, our team is waiting for direction as well. So
Okay.
we are advocating for the regions to have input in the whole process.
And I would assume that as the legislation is going through the process, if nothing else, we can show up at the committee meetings. We don't have to have the state's permission to do that. So, we'll have a chance to take a bite at the apple. It would be nice to try to shape some of it before it even gets to that point, but we know we've got that opportunity if nothing else.
And Brad, just so everybody's aware, from a public perspective, OCD can't carry the legislation forward, right? It has to come from the governor's office.
Well, it wouldn't just be OCD either. It would be because it's not just OCD representing the I mean, it would have to come from the council, yeah, or the governor's office. The council as a whole, which would represent the 5 state agencies, or the governor's office, right?
Okay.
Okay, Earl, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brad, I would think that the governor would like to have a sponsor from each region, a legislator to help him sponsor that bill going forward. To me, that would be the most logical way to make sure that it gets passed. If you would have a state legislator from each one of the regions that co-sponsors it with the governor, and you would probably walk it right through. I just think that would be a basic. That's why I said we got to participate.
Right. And I think that's kind of, there's going to be a whole strategy. This discussion is great, but I think, there will be a whole strategy that's developed for this process. And I think that is great information, Earl, and I will definitely relay that message to the right people.
Sure, that'd be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. Appreciate that. If there's not any other comments on this, I'm going to jump back, Brad, since you're on. We'll jump back to item number 3, which is just general watershed updates. Do you have anything you want to share with us?
So the next council meeting will most likely be in December, early December, before the holidays. So other than that, we all know that the model use storage maintenance plan public comment period is underway. There's going to be I think an e-blast that goes out this week that explains the kind of amended, there was originally supposed to be 2 webinars, but there's only going to be 1 now, and it's going to be 3 hours long. It's 9 to noon on September 24th. And that's going to be an overview. I know you all have been briefed, your region has been briefed on the model use plan, but this will be open to the public and open to anyone, stakeholders. And they're making it 3 hours to provide more time for questions. So, and the public comment period goes until October 25th. So this will hopefully, once the public comment period is complete, this will be an action item for whatever comes from the feedback. It'll be an action item for the December council, and hopefully along with paths forward for the legislative package. Other than that, nature-based solutions trainings that were again postponed because of the storm, we're going to resume. Ideally, the first one would start in October, so probably the end of October now, to make sure everyone across the state has enough time to get back online. And I guess there's a lot. So I know we're still waiting for policies and procedures for round 2 design support pilot and the regional capacity building phase 2. Those are the policies and procedures are still under final review. But again, we hope to have some movement with both of those programs in the next month or so. Maybe let's say 2 months, at least 2 months. They're in the final completion of review. So then our team will provide feedback to the watershed coordinators on how to move forward and what we're doing, what the state's going to do for round 2 selection, and what the state is going to do. Like, we'll give more feedback on the application process for RCBG Part 2, which is the $800,000 capacity building.
Thank you, Brad. Brad, could you
Thank you.
also, for those who don't know, I think everybody should have gotten notification, but just quickly mention Alex's transition and maybe who's stepping in at the moment?
Yes. So yeah, Alex has since moved on to create her own LLC. So we're very excited for her. And in her absence, we have Lakeisha Hart, who's going to be, she's a deputy director, and she's going to be kind of the interim manager of LWI for right now. And we are planning to hire, like, we're in a hiring phase of a new manager and some other analysts for the team.
All right.
I don't think Lakeisha's on the call, but yeah, Lakeisha's on the implementation team of Office of Community Development, and she's been really influential in all the round 1 project evaluation and scoring and implementation of the program.
All right. Well, we got you. Any members have any questions for Brad? All right. We will move back to agenda item number 5, which is the flood coordination plan update. Keely, that's you again.
So yeah, one more. We're kind of still in legislative strategies. Just wanted to, like I said, start this conversation today. So, we want to have this outreach strategy or plan or draft of it prior to the upcoming 2022 session. And so we kind of identified who, what, and how, and wanted to get, again, your input, thoughts on this as we develop this. Who, obviously, I know Earl, and we're echoing this, that we have our legislatures could be contacted through our steering committee members, APC, myself. What we want to convey our progress. We've been working on this since, I think, the fall of 2019 and beyond, now that we've renewed for 4 years for the capacity building grants, and how we need those watershed champions and our Region 5 supporters. And then, as Earl suggested, having a legislator co-sponsor the bill. Resources to consider. Again, we have this final government's recommendation infographic. We have our 1-pager. We have our action plan, very nice graphic to show people the progress thus far. Focus on the members of maybe the House and Senate committees that are relevant to LWI. Again, our members may be contacting their legislators to support the upcoming our coalition building legislation. And last year, or actually it was this year, we did a legislative roundtable. And it's something we could do again in February or March 2022 that could be helpful for our region. So just wanted to present this to you, and again, get maybe any thoughts or feedback at this time. If not, obviously you could always send your feedback or thoughts or suggestions to me later as well. So I'll open it up to anyone that maybe has any additional comments.
I saw Rachel was on here as well. Matt and Rachel, what do y'all think in terms of like roundtables at the beginning of next year? Not just for our region, but also like for the areas that are basically split. Is it worth having, like, for instance, your area and our area, and maybe, I don't know. I'm just, my thought process and why I'm dwelling on it so much is to get ahead of the curve and really do the legwork and outreach. Because when we've talked to our legislators in the past, the questions that came up was, what are y'all doing? Y'all are not spending the money fast enough. And immediately some of our members that have been on these committees for the last 2 years, snapped back and basically said, we've been working on this diligently, and it's not going to happen overnight. It has been a process. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it. But is there any thought into setting up some of the legislative roundtables? Because in my opinion, I don't think we can wait till like March or April to set up these. I mean, the session starts April 12th. And in our experience, it's hard to get on the legislator's calendar. It fills up quickly at the beginning of the year. So what's the best time to get before them? You know, is it multiple in a room? Do we want to do a collaborative effort across the regions with the coordinators to maybe facilitate some of those discussions? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely want to do it ahead of time. I guess the only question is how well we can coordinate their schedules. You know, I'd be willing to do as many team meetings with the individual representatives and senators as needed, but if we can get a group of them together, then that's ideal, right? And I know you guys hustle to make that stuff happen, to get them all in the same room at the same time. That obviously I think is the best way to do it. And having a strong, I mean, we've got the background. We've talked about this thing for 2 years, but having it down and concise to where they can digest it pretty easily and walk out of the meeting thinking, well, this is something I definitely want to support. That's where we want to go.
Hey, can you hear me, Rachel?
Yeah, I got you.
And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Sanderson. I work at Capital Region Planning Commission, and I'm the watershed coordinator for 7. But I agree with what Matt was saying too. I think if we could find time January, February, that would be somewhat beneficial. And then I think something else that comes to mind as well is to be, you know, I know Brad, y'all are still thinking about what strategy is at the state level. And so one thing that comes to mind, if we're going to have some coordinated legislative roundtables that are cross region, I think having some support from y'all's consultants to be able to help plan and organize and set those up could be helpful, at least from my perspective, to be able to kind of do what Matt was talking about, get some of those folks organized and in the same space, because I know that there are some regions that have more legislative relationships than others. And I think the other thing too that comes to mind leading up to that is really making sure that we have some really consistent messaging around all of this across the state. And I think, again, I know Brad, y'all are working diligently on this, and things have been in flux, especially with Ida. But, you know, I know that there are things that are in our recommendation that look different than things that are in APCs, right? Or not APCs, sorry, Region 5. And same across the state. And so how we're communicating that information while also getting broad-based support and buy-in, I think is also going to be a challenge that we want to plan for.
And I know from some people's perspective, it may seem premature to talk about these discussions, but the reality is when you get into holiday season, people become sparse. And so we're heading into November and December before we know it. And then once you hit that beginning of the next year, there's filing dates and everything that need to happen. And then as it gets closer to session, it gets harder to get before some of these legislators. So that's why we're having this discussion today. So I just so there's awareness among the group that it seems like we have a lot of time, but in reality, time slips away before we know it, especially around holiday season.
Yeah, I agree. Any of the members have any comments on that strategy? All
I have a
right.
comment.
All right.
One of the things I guess that I wanted to be clear on is that our region could move forward with funding projects without this governance strategy, or however it's going to work out. Without this taking place, we could still move forward with funding projects, correct? And I think we should do that. I think we should focus on trying to get as much of that done as possible so that we can show the benefits of us working together in a regional manner. And I think if we could do that, then it's going to be a lot easier to get the support of our legislators in whatever the governance is going to end up being.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I'm sure we're going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
So if we're not enabled this legislative session, I don't think the initiative in general will stop. Round 2, round 3 funding will still happen. So there will be funding available still for projects. So that will continue. It's the legislative process does in terms of enabling coalitions is setting up the sustainability piece beyond the life of the project funding. We all know that project funding will run out quickly. I mean, there's enough projects to, as we know, there's more projects than funding. And so, you know, what happens after that? Are we going to significantly change or shift the way that planning occurs and coordination occurs in Louisiana? And I think that's what the goal is. So, you know, if for whatever reason it's not successful this legislative session, there may be opportunity to revisit it, I think. And then the other thing is maybe there's discussions that need to happen in terms of contingency plans if this is not enabled at the state. And that might, you know, that might be part of the conversation that needs to happen moving forward. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Matt.
You nailed it. I had not actually thought about what if the state doesn't move forward. Like that hasn't even been a thought of mine yet, but I guess that is something we do need to consider.
Yeah, I think we all think it's not an option to not move forward.
Donald, that was a great point though. And that is something we can highlight as we're doing the outreach. You know, these are the funds that are already in play and again, across every region. And these are the funds that are still coming. These are the processes that we're working to try to make sure those funding opportunities get, you know, funneled to the right projects. So, and that it's you know, we have some local input, we have a regional process, that it's not just the top down from the state.
I think most of those legislators want to see some projects in their districts. And I think, you know, if we could focus on that, then I think they would see the benefit of us going forward. I do support that idea of trying to get one or more legislators in the region to push this on our behalf. We need to find the ones that are supportive, very supportive of going forward. And if we can identify those, then I think we could get some ideas from them on how to move forward with their colleagues.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah. And, Kelia, I don't know if you want to elaborate on it, but we're looking at setting up some meetings with a couple of people that we know may champion this initiative from a legislative perspective. So there are some opportunities that we're looking at, and if you want more information, you know, feel free to give us a call.
Yeah, Ralph Libersat, our other steering committee member, represents Vermilion Parish. We're reaching out to Representative Ryan Boryak to set up a meeting with him. So, yeah.
So I'd like to just chime in a little bit. This is Monique. So Bradley, I think the message to carry to everyone over there is that it's going to be, you know, I guess, if this initiative gets lost in Baton Rouge, it becomes partisan. And then you guys are going to turn to us and say, we need you to get your local legislators. And I guess what Rachel is trying to communicate is that's going to take time and we have to cultivate them. If you turn to us in March, we can't do it and you're on your own and it's partisan. If you want the local groundwork to be a real factor, you have to let us start working it now. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing and the political reality about this. So the people on the council, they all need to know, they're going to turn to us and say, we need you to get your legislators, because our legislators do what they do and none of us can control that. But we can cultivate them and educate them and bring them into this. We just can't do it in March. And so I think, and I'm not really, you know, fussing at you at all. I'm just saying, if you could carry that message back to them, they have been holding us back because they want an overall strategy, which is great. But part of that little strategy when they panic is going to be get your guys on the ground. And we won't be able to if we haven't taken the time to really bring them into it and give them ownership and cultivate them. That takes time. And so I think that's what I'm hearing. And that's what, and we can do it. We can get you some legislators that you won't get in a partisan battle. We just have to have the time and capacity and authority from you guys to kind of run with this a little bit at the ground level. So that's it.
All right, Brad, you good?
Yeah, I'm taking it in. That was really good. And I'm just wondering.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I'm just wondering who, like, I don't see why you can't start. I mean, you already are starting to cultivate.
Okay.
Like, I guess I'm trying to think, who's the right person that I need to speak to in a way to make sure to give you guys the green light? Because I feel like you already are taking charge.
Yeah.
But I don't see why you can't. I think what you all are doing is wonderful in kind of mustering this support, the outreach support without a statewide strategy yet. But
And I think if, I understand they're putting a strategy. They have to think through, you guys have to think through it from a statewide perspective. And it's a complex strategy that has to come together. But at the end of the day, I know they're going to turn and say, we need your guys, because our guys are going to be jumping in the fray, right? From whatever, the way they do in Baton Rouge. And so yeah, and maybe it's Pat, I don't know. And if you want me to get on the phone with somebody, I can, but there's just that political reality, and we have the capacity. I mean, this is good programming, right? So we just can't get those legislators, if we call a meeting in March, we'll get 3 of them to show up. And so, I mean, we know that, right? But if we take the time out of session now to bring them in, and they're interested, they want to know if something good is happening and they want ownership in it. So we can do that, but we don't want to be working against what's happening at the state level. Some coordinate, it doesn't have to be exactly coordinated, but we need it to filter into what you guys are doing and for some awareness. And it may be a call, with Pat or whomever, to just say, let us be working the ground level now. And, don't wait till we're all in a box in February, March.
Right. I will carry this message, and I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see why you can't like move forward with your own on the ground.
I think they get nervous anytime we meet with the legislators, rightfully so, right? Because it's kind of a wild card there. But if we're gonna do it for real, and we're gonna go to in this session, then it needs to happen now at the ground level.
Okay, thank you for that. And I will, let me see who I can talk to. And I don't think it would hurt, Monique, if you want to talk to Pat too.
All right, Earl.
Yeah, Matt and Brad, I guess you're aware that there was a bill introduced by Fred Mills in this legislation session. And of course, it didn't go anywhere because I don't think it was somewhat of a trial balloon. Is there anything that the state has done in relation to a proposed bill that would give us some basics to work with to go after the legislators like Monique is recommending? I mean, that's really kind of what we need. We need some sort of a semi-loaded gun, in a sense, that gives us a picture. And out of that, you'll get a lot of input as to what maybe your constituents would like to see. And that would be good input for the governor to take a look at before the bill is actually introduced in the spring. So, you kind of got to have a starting point. And if you had any sort of a preliminary bill that they would let us work with to grow into the right bill that would pass, I think that would be a way to go at it. So that's my recommendation.
Matt, I'd like to say something as well.
Go for it, sir.
I don't know how to raise, there's the raise hand button. No, but just kind of echoing all the thoughts or adding my 2 cents here. We have 8 watershed regions, and all of them are putting together their ideas of a governance plan to LWI for LWI to consider them all and then come up maybe with one plan. I'm not quite sure if that's the idea, but that's what I would think if they're going to do legislation. And so I agree with some of the comments about the earlier we can meet with them, the better. But if we're pushing ideas or plans forward to our legislatures that doesn't make it through LWI's screening process, I worry about us not all being on the same page. Does
Yes.
that make any sense?
That is very important, Donald, in that, Bradley, we don't have, and I guess that's also backing up to what I'm hearing is that we don't, I know you guys are trying to process all of the recommendations, but if we could have high level goals, you know, of what the governance is going to look like. So we're feeding them. I mean, it needs to move faster at the state. I'm sorry, but we need to be able to give them some, not just this is what we recommend, because if we recommend it and we sell it to them and then you guys cut it, we're all in a box, you know. So we don't want to say this is what we want and here, go push it, and then create conflict later.
Yeah, I think the point would be the model. You know, most of the regions have said we want to try to host it regionally, but if you guys go with what Region 7 said, you know, then go with the state hosted, then and we've been talking to them for 2 months, building it up this way, and then you come back and the legislation's all worded to make it state level, then, you know, we just want to make sure we're pulling the same direction on all the key points.
Right. And there is risk of us running with this, you know, there is a risk there if we're not on, again, you don't have to have every single detail, but if we have, you know, I mean, the hosting of that model, we've had enough conversation about that for more than a year, for a long time. You know, they should have some idea of where they want to go. Let's shoot there, and, you know, unless, I mean, we don't want to battle. We don't want to be a part of a battle. It's good work. We want it done well. I think I'm beating a dead horse. Anyway, I'm muting myself.
We want to go the same direction, not play tug of war. We're all on it. I think I heard somebody else jumping in. Nope. Okay. Keely, were you done with everything on item 4?
Yes, we are good.
Great. Let's move into the flood coordination plan update, please.
Okay. So I'm going to give a summary for everyone. So our region, I want to kind of iterate our original motivation to have this flood coordination plan. So it's LWI Region 5, you know, we've identified the great need for the coordination among our parishes. We want to be proactive and have each parish authority make those informed decisions, the parishes, when it comes to flooding conditions. So it's an ongoing effort to recognize this flood coordination with our region's respective authorities and watersheds within our region. So on August 13th, we did have a Zoom meeting, a conference call with GOSAP, the Governor's Office of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness, and also the Army Corps. So we wanted to inform them what our region was doing, and we don't want to, duplicate any efforts that they're currently doing. So GOSAP, just to give you some information about that meeting that you're not, unless you're aware of what GOSAP and the Corps does. GOSAP uses the National Weather Service for their data on storm surges. So their forecasts are based on the rainfall predictions and current water levels. There's also an annual meeting and a joint annual meeting with GOSAP regions. I believe in Region 4 for GOSAP. GOSAP has a conference call with parishes. They involve state agencies to provide feedback to the parishes. There's also a Southeast and Southwest Hurricane Task Force that hosts these conference calls. These can be by parish or multi-parish, as it depends on the affected entities. examples like water districts, parishes, and the GOSEP regional boundaries. The state also has an annual pre-hurricane meeting with FEMA only. And as I understand it from my notes, not with the parishes or regions, but we can maybe make a request to be included on these meetings. The Corps participates in all state calls as they have an emergency management office. The Corps has a 3-minute weekly phone call to brief entities, which would be like levee boards, districts. I believe there's a coastal focus, to brief them on current and forecasted river stages and how any upcoming weather could affect the duration of flood conditions. And I did request to be on this list for these weekly phone calls. So today we might want to reevaluate our goal for the flood coordination. Do you want to facilitate meetings in addition to GOSEP and the Corps? It could be a phone call. The Kitty Planning Commission, we have these COVID calls. It could be similar to that. Or do we use a forecasting tool, which is our next agenda item that Dr. Iman Habib will present, to have that decision, to make those decisions, to make those calls. We need to get the parish, government input and their commitment if they want to be part of these regional calls. So kind of wanted to get the committee's members' input regarding this regional flood coordination plan. Now that we kind of know a little more defined of what GOSEP and the Corps is doing currently, that the parishes, already are involved in these types of calls.
At the risk of putting Casey Corval on the spot, Casey, if you're available, you actually provided most of the input on this so far. As far as us trying to do something similar, could you speak to what you think about what Keely is mentioning and kind of what role we could play moving forward?
Yeah, no, I appreciate what Keely just explained and the effort that you guys have all put in. I think like we had first spoke about, these GOSEP calls and through the National Weather Service and through these parish government in the different regions, it's normally for hurricane events and any type of extreme weather event. And it is coordinated based off of, I guess, each parish will kind of report the ongoings in that parish and what the preparations are going to be. This call right here, and I guess with this flood prevention or flood management team, this predicated from, I guess, about a year ago when we had a few people that kind of in the community were doing this. And I know Donald's on this call too. I believe that this call is still going to be necessary, and I think it's just, and especially if APC is coordinating it, just to provide updates, as well as what we're seeing from GOSEP and at the parish level or parish government level. Whether it's Corps of Engineer reports, whether it's my parish government may be doing something that'll be a good tool for Rapides Parish, and Matt might be able to use it. I just believe that this should be essentially a formal update call for each weather or extreme weather event. Now, triggering that call, that's, I guess, what we need to hash out on when it's going to be triggered. If I'm all over the place, forgive me. I'm a little under the weather today, so.
No, I think that clearly makes sense. What you're and that's what we were trying to figure out is what is GOSEP doing? What is the Army Corps doing? Making sure we're not duplicating any of their efforts. And I think what I understand, and that's what we're trying to identify, is what is the gap that is not being fulfilled? What service would you all like us to provide on your behalf? And that sounds like it's just updating about what each parish is doing in the event of some sort of flooding, because hurricanes, it's currently happening from a GOSEP perspective with evacuations, and there's some sort of coordination. But it's one, how are you operating your structures? What are you doing with your structures in the time of some sort of event? And then is there some sort of update that can be given by parishes? So I do appreciate the feedback, Casey, because sometimes we're getting stuck a little bit on this about how to proceed forward. And I think what we need to end up doing is draft a formal letter asking parishes to participate in this event, in this call, formalizing it through some sort of memorandum of understanding or agreement as to what is the call, the purpose, the intent, when would it be enacted, and what are the tools that we're going to be using? Because I don't want to be in a position where APC as a facilitating body is telling any of you all what to do. It's just providing a platform for you all to have that open dialogue and communication about what's occurring in each parish, and then providing you with some support, whether it's through some of the scientific tools to be able to make whatever decisions you all would like to make.
Right, I agree. And I think that's a great explanation. It's really, the way I see it is, I don't think the public at large, or even APC here, or even different agencies do truly realize the amount of coordination that does go on, I guess, behind the scenes. I guess this could be more of an open public kind of comment of, okay, what are you guys doing? We get calls and and I know Donald's on. Donald, I called you out earlier, and I don't mean to call you out again, but Donald gives updates, and we're in contact during different storm events. This is already done on a very wide scale, this coordination or any type of flood prevention. But if this could be done through the LWI, some task force that could just repeat, to the public that this is what's going on, and this is already being taken care of. No need to try to call everybody and try to get everybody on board to try to push something that's already been done, if you follow.
Yes.
I might add to that, Casey, everything that's been said, I agree completely with, but I think it's good for the different parishes to know what everyone else is doing, especially our agency, because we do get questions from different parishes as to what we're doing at certain structures. So I think a coordinated call with a representative from each parish that could be in touch with the leadership of the parish president or the consul, or however they handle it in their parish, if they have a knowledge of what we're doing with our structures, for example, I think that would be definitely a good thing for us. And I think it should be handled either through APC itself for now until we are, I guess, have some type of a formal governance committee or board that if ACP would coordinate it, I would surely be in favor of that.
Absolutely, so would I. Yep, exactly.
And let me ask this question. Is this just needed on the Tash Vermilion, or do we also extend this service to Mermentau and Mermentau headwaters? I don't know if anybody's on the call from that area. I mean, I know Mermentau affects Vermilion, a little bit of Acadia, Jeff Davis.
I would assume if they're in the region and their structures affect anything within this region, I would suggest that they would be on that call too.
Okay. All right. Good.
Any other comments on this? All right. I think Keely, Dr. Habib, and what we're about to talk about.
Okay, thank you everyone for your input. That's good. I appreciate it. The next agenda item, excuse me, we have the Vermilion River flood forecasting tool, which nicely ties in. Today we have Dr. Iman Habib. He is also a RSC Regional Steering Committee member and the director of the UL Louisiana Watershed Flood Center. Dr. Habib will present on the web-based platform for flood forecasting in the Vermilion River. The forecasting system provides near real-time forecasts for flood elevations along the Vermilion River ahead of and during storms such as the recent Hurricane Ida and Tropical Storm Nicholas. The information can be used by citizens and local communities, as well as emergency management officials who need to respond to real-time hazard storms. Dr. Habib, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or good morning, everybody. And, thank you for the opportunity to share some of our recent research that I thought is, when I talked with Kelia and Rachel about it, they said that it could be a good venue to talk about during this call, given that there's a discussion on flood coordination, right? So, and like Casey said, and many others on the call said that there's so much going on. A lot of entities and agencies provide data on during storms, including NOAA, the Corps of Engineers, GOSEP, the parishes. So this is not by any chance a replacement of any of these efforts or any of this information. You can think of it as another data point that we think could be useful to the conversation on the flood coordination. And if we get enough feedback from the community, from you all, we can continue to develop it in directions that could inform the discussion. So that's really the spirit of this tool. We developed it as a pilot system using our resources here at UL and building on some of the recent work we did. But it's a beta system. It's by no chance something that is finished and done. But I wanted to show it early enough to get feedback from you and see if this can be any useful to the conversations that happen during storms and ahead of storms. So I have a couple slides here that I'm going to show, and hopefully I'm not going to take too much of your time, but let me see if I can share the screen. Yeah,
you should be able to share, Dr. Habib.
Be able to share. Okay. So let me see if I can do this. Good. Okay. So, right. So like I said, this is a kind of a pilot project that we have been working on for the last, year plus actually. And the idea is that we wanted to develop this flood forecasting system, and the pilot is the Vermilion watershed, just because we have been doing a lot of work in that area. But the concept and the tools could be expanded to other areas as long as you have the data that supports that. And to be more specific, we are looking for providing real-time forecasts on flood stages in the river and tributaries. And we would like that these forecasts to be issued and updated in real time ahead of and during storms every hour or every few hours for the next few days, when there's a storm approaching or already happening in the area. And we think that this information, like Kelia said, can be used for several purposes. I don't think I need to elaborate on those. But what I want to talk with you about today is to just present what we have done so far and kind of tell you about the next steps that we're gonna take, or would like to take this forward, and get some feedback from you on how useful this is and how it can be useful actually from your perspective. So just a quick review of what is currently available and how we want to build on that, right? So the primary source of information here is NOAA, the National Weather Service, and then other agencies that act on based on this information. So what we typically get during, for example, during Nicholas or Ida or any other storm, we get information like that, very detailed information on rainfall amounts, right? We all watch the weather channels and we know, okay, Lafayette is going to get 10 inches, or this area will get this many inches, very useful information. And most of the time it proves to be accurate, maybe not necessarily about the timing or the place, but it gives us a trend of where things are happening and in terms of rainfall. And then the Weather Service has a system that's up and running called the AHPS, which is Advanced Hydraulic Prediction Service. and that's run out of Slidell for our region, actually the National Office in Slidell. Great folks, we collaborate with them a lot, and they issue forecasts for 2 locations along the Vermilion River, for example. You can see the map here with those dots or points. This is where the Weather Service issues forecasts. So for example, in our region here for the Vermilion, there's one, sometimes at most 2 locations where they issue forecasts. And the forecast in the form that you see here on the right side with a hydrograph rising, and this is expected and be updated as much as they can. And so that's really what's available for us as far as flooding is concerned. Unlike rainfall, the information that we have on the flooding impact is very sparse in space, as you can see here, 1 or 2 locations, for the Vermilion River, if you think that's an example. And other than that, you really don't have any information on other locations along the river, how other locations along the river will flood or not, and also in the tributaries, right? And most of our communities actually don't, live in the tributaries, and that's where most of the flooding happens also. So we don't see anything about that other than there will be flooding in the area, or over Lafayette, expect flash flooding, expect widespread flooding. Very useful information, but it's very coarse and without specific location. And it does not also give us any idea about those flood maps, right? Is my community or neighborhood or street, gonna be flooded during that? What's the likelihood that it will be flooded, right? So how do we kind of cross the gap between this large scale information, mostly at the rainfall level? How do we provide a lot more detailed information on flooding, whether at different locations in the river or the tributaries, or also on flooded areas, communities and neighborhoods? So basically, this is how we are thinking about developing the system that we're working on here, that to be able to provide this kind of detailed information, we would like to take the rainfall forecast. Like I said, they are very reliable now in terms of the resolution and the availability, and run that through hydrologic models. We do have a model here at UL for the Vermilion River, and the region will develop through LWI and other engineers. There'll be a wealth of models that will be produced over the next year or 2, very detailed models. So those will be tools that you can actually consume or digest the rainfall forecast. And because of the resolution of these models, including the one that we have here at UL, you should be able to provide information or forecasts at, I call it, location specific, at any location, not only on the river, ideally more on the tributaries, ideally more in the neighborhood scales, right? This is a long-term vision, right? I mean, it's not easy, it's not trivial, but I believe we have the tools, we, the community, have the tools to be able to reach to that vision, where somebody can go there on a web portal and click on a place, and they can find in real time what's the possibility or what's the chance that their community will be flooded. Maybe not the neighborhood, not the street or the house, because that's unrealistic, I think, with the tools that we have, but at least it will give them an idea about their area, their neighborhood, maybe at most, which will be very useful, again, for many applications. So what we have done so far, like I said, we do have, sorry to score, but we have the rainfall forecast, we have a model that for the Vermilion River. So we wanted to kind of pilot test that concept and see how far we can go with it. So without getting into a whole lot of details, we developed during IDA and then during Nicholas a beta system that actually runs in real time, right? So, and we put the information, the forecast online. Again, it's very beta. So, I always tell folks, look at the weather service, right? Look at this is just a kind of a demo purpose, and it can be useful, but the official forecast will come from the official folks, right? But the website, this is the website. So let me see if I can actually take you to it. It's right. So let me stop sharing if I can, and I'll share something else. So this is, what it looks like. You can see the Vermilion River here. You can zoom in. So currently, we can issue, as we speak, we can issue a forecast at any of these locations, at any location along the river. Actually, this is just sample points. So the idea is that the person can go there, click here, they can get a hydrograph. So this is a hydrograph for that point at Ambassador Caffrey. This forecast was issued 2-3 days ago when the hurricane was still running. So we issued the forecast on the 13th of September. And then the forecast at that time was showing that the river will reach a point of 8 feet This is an NAVD, so you need to add 2 point something feet to it, 2.75 feet to get the gauge height that we are used to. So if you add about 2.75, you get about 10 to 11, which really what happened at the end of the day. The river actually reached that elevation, that was the max. So the forecast system worked pretty reliably, I would say. So that's really what the system does now. And like I said, we developed this interface using Google Maps, so it's not too complicated to do. However, we are working also on a more kind of detailed interface. I don't know if you can see it here or not, but this interface here will allow folks to see a lot more useful information. So I can come and click on this location here and along the river. Again, I can see the rainfall forecast, right? So we can display also the rainfall forecast, that blue colors here. Again, this was issued on September 13th, the same one I showed you in a minute here. This is up and running, except it's in a testing mode. So we're still working some of the IT stuff, and it shows you the forecast. We issue it every 6 hours for about 10 days ahead of time. So September 13th all the way to September 23rd when it was issued. So this is what we call a mid-range forecast, but it can give you an idea about how high the river will rise and how long it will take it to recede. At the top here, we also show the stream flow, the amount of flow forecasted in the river, not only the stage. And sure enough, it shows those negative values. The river, we know that it flows north during actually strong storms. Even during this storm, which was not the worst for our area, the river still flowed north. If you can switch here, you can see the forecast time. This is, you can switch now to look at the next forecast, which this is an example that we issued. And the next day, September 14th at 7 a.m., the river, again, was still flowing north. And also that you can see the stage in the river, it went up a little bit. And this forecast covers all the way to 24, so about a week from now. And you can see at the time we issued that forecast that there's another storm coming. It's not a tropical storm, but just another rain. So the forecast system could see the rainfall storm that will come on the 20th. We're going to see a good bit of wet period ahead of time. From now on, I think there's a very wet weather coming along the way. So you can, the system will allow you to browse through these storms. The forecast as they come and updated in real time. So a person or an official or somebody who's trying to respond to something, they can, go to this system in real time and click on a point and find out how much rainfall is forecasted, how high the river is expected to rise. And if they are interested in the information about the stream flow, they can find it there as well. I forgot to say that the system actually takes into account already the operations of the Tesh Vermilion Freshwater District structures, because we modeled that already in the model. So we can actually tell, we know how much water is going through the Ruth Canal. Nothing actually, because they close it during the storms. They lower by Cortabla, so it captures that because we have all that programmed into the model. But we can also play scenarios in real time. What if you open it by this much? What if you open it by that much? How much that will impact the river? So the decisions will be made based on some underlying, analysis, not just perception or personal judgment. So again, like I said, this is by no means, a done work or we would like to, we still have some ways to make this more, has more information, more features. So I'll share with you some notes on what we are working on currently, and then I'll start maybe with questions. But we would like to, we know that the rainfall forecasts are highly uncertain in time and place. Nobody can predict those for sure. And as such, the forecast in the river also should carry that confidence level, right? When we get the forecast about the hurricane, they don't tell us one path, right? They tell us this is the cloud and you'll be somewhere in there. So also we would like the system, and we have the tools to do that, to be able to produce an ensemble forecast, right? What are 10 possible forecasts in the river and what's the most likely one? For example, the blue here. This is an example. We are not there yet, but we are working on it. So this will be very useful because we know that one answer is never going to be right. So I would like to see a group of answers and you tell me which one is the most likely, but the range will be between this and that. This way the response will be based on actual information. It also captures the confidence level in your forecasts. we also noticed, and no surprise, that the forecast in the river and in the tributaries are very dependent on the Gulf conditions, right? Again, no surprise, the Vermilion is dependent on that. So what we are currently working on, and with conversation with some NOAA folks and with the service, to try to take forecasts in the Gulf and also incorporate that into the model, so into the system, so that when the system forecasts the river, it takes into account the forecasts in the Gulf. Sycamore Point or other points there are stations, there are models that produce real-time forecasts in the Gulf. So we'd like to consume those to capture them in the forecast of the river. And then finally, and that's I think where would be more exciting, is that we would like not only to provide forecasts at locations, at points, but produce those real-time flood maps, right? So that still requires quite a bit of work, because now we are talking about very heavy information that you need to produce in real time, right? Just consuming the data and displaying it in real time becomes a challenge. But anyway, so this is some of the next steps that we would like to work on. And like I said, we would very much welcome your feedback now or later. If you feel free to call me or contact me and give me some feedback if you want. But we think this can be very useful in the conversation about the flood coordination that Rachel and Kelly are referring to. Again, by no chance this is the replacement of anything. It just think about it being another data point that can be useful to the conversation. It can be developed further to provide a lot more useful information. Like I said, it can support operations control structures in real time, support emergency management and operation centers. UL used it during the hurricane actually to decide on closing or not. And we were able to forecast at a time that the river will not rise to a stage that will flood a lot of folks. So they decided not to close. And I think that was a good decision. Like I said, it can be very useful for local citizens, and with a lot of caveats that, again, the Weather Service, the Corps, the FEMA, the GOSEP are the official source of information. Again, like I said, really would like to hear from you today or later on how this can be improved, what kind of information that would be useful to you. This is how we think about it, how we, meaning here in the university, researchers, but I'm not very, very informed about the emergency operations decisions and what kind of information they need to be able to improve their decision making. So thanks again for the opportunity. I'll answer questions if you have, and feel free to email me as well. Thanks, Celia.
Thank you, Dr. Habib. This is thank you for your forecasting and your vision casting. And what I like about this is, like you said, it's that specific kind of location data, or potentially working towards that, because even you look at Surrey or the flood stage gauge, but people need to know what's going to happen, in their area when they're going home. So this is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
We did have a question from Cade in the chat. I think you might have hit it when you talked about the river starting to flow north, but he asked the reason for the dip right before the storm in the flood stage.
Right. Yeah, I guess a good question. And so we start the river from the current stage, right? And we started when the river was still going down. The storm did not come yet, right? And when the storm came in the forecast, the river picked up. Does that make sense? So that down, the river was still going down because there was nothing happening in the region, right?
And I was taking a look at like all the different tools that you guys are using to try to make sure that you're getting it right, and it is really impressive. I wish we had some of that stuff up here where I'm at. It's amazing. I don't have anything to offer to make it better because it's already so far advanced from anything I even knew existed already.
Well, thank you, Matt. Yeah.
And I think the implementation of the gauge project statewide, I think, is a component of this that can, I'm sure Dr. Habib wouldn't mind doing this on behalf of the entire state eventually, if we can get them there. So that is definitely good feedback, Matt. And I think that's something that we can consider, if it's of interest of the rest of the regions. I'm sure he'd be willing to adapt it pending funding.
Absolutely. I mean, the availability of gauges will improve tools like this a lot, right? Again, currently we have 2 or 3 gauges in the Vermilion River. So, the models can use better calibration, better validation, better initialization, because when you start the forecast, you would like to know what's the current state of the river now. So you start from the right foot, right on the right foot. So if you don't have enough measurements, observations, then you'll be starting off altogether. So the gauges will be a huge improvement for applications like this.
Any other members have any comments or questions for Dr. Habib? All right, thank you so much. That was really good stuff.
Thank you, Matt, for the opportunity.
All right, next item on the agenda is talking through the meeting schedule. Keely, you want to walk us through what's happening and when?
Yes, so this is included in your agenda packet. So our next meeting would be the Capital Improvement Subcommittee meeting, which is September 30th at 10 a.m. Our next Region 5 Steering Committee meeting is Thursday, October 21st from 10 to noon. And our next governance meeting will be November 9th at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I believe it's a Wednesday. Yes, because there's Veterans Day on the Thursday. So our next governance meeting will be on a Wednesday.
I'm looking at the calendar. I think it's a Tuesday.
All right. Oh, Tuesday? Okay.
Yeah, Veterans Day is set for that Thursday, the 11th.
That Thursday. Okay, I had it wrong on the agenda. Thank you.
All right, are there any other updates, any miscellaneous updates? Anybody got anything you want to share with the group?
I have a couple, Matt. The Acadian Planning Commission, we're hosting, going back to flood coordination, we're hosting a meeting on September 28th in Lafayette. This will be about the Tesh Freshwater District operations and impact. This is a case study and will be presented by Dr. Habib. The Tesh Freshwater District actually contracted the UL Louisiana Watershed Flood Center for this study, and it's looking at the freshwater diversion effects on flood conditions in the Tesh Vermilion watershed. So that will be happening on the 28th. Also, just to inform you, the steering committee members, that regarding our governance recommendation, we had some boundary modifications. There were slivers of St. Martin and Iberia Parish that our governance recommendation, we recommended to absorb the parish. I think there was some concerns with Region 6. So we want to have a meeting with the Region 6, the regional steering committee members, just to talk about these changes. So that's upcoming.
Okay, will that be a call with them, or is that just staff meeting with their folks?
I think it's an initial conference call, Rachel, and then I think that's how it's presented.
When we made the recommendation, we checked with Region 6 to see, if there was going to be any issues in terms of changing the boundary. There's no population in Iberia. I think there's very little in St. Martin, but the idea was to offer to the parishes, do you want to collaborate in two regions? Do you want to stay just in, the Region 5, since the majority of the land mass, it's significant. I mean, I can't, if you can look at the map just to see the small portion that's in the Region 6. So there was no issue at the time. So some questions ended up surfacing regarding why the change was made. So we just need to have a few conference calls just to ensure that the justifications there by the parishes to confirm that everybody's on the same page. So those conversations are happening. We're trying to ensure that there's alignment among the two regions, and just giving you all creating awareness with this committee that's happening. I don't think it's going to change our governance recommendation, but I can't guarantee.
All right, noted. Any other updates for the committee? All right, next we'll do a public comment. I don't think we have a ton of folks that are just public, but we will open it up if you have any public comment on anything we've talked about so far. I don't see anything in the chat box, but we will open the lines for just a second.
Brad did ask if Dr. Habib, you'd be willing to share the presentation you gave.
Absolutely, I will. Yes, absolutely. As long as you say do not use the forecast to evacuate or do anything.
Planning purposes only.
I mean, just I don't want to get in trouble. So no, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
You can add a disclaimer, but thank you.
Yes. And the good news, I mean, like I said, we will try to keep this running in real time. so that whenever a storm hits, we'll be able to forecast it and monitor the system and how it behaves and see if it actually providing good forecasts or not. So I'll keep you guys posted with any updates that we make.
Please do. All right. Any public comment on any agenda item? All right, guys, I think we're done. You saved 36 minutes. Congratulations.
Have a good day.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Donald, I move to adjourn.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Casey, I'll second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any opposition to adjourning? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.